All good.
Perfect. Just waiting for my document to load. So can everybody see my slides okay?
Yep, all
They're
good.
coming through loud and clear. Good. So thanks for inviting me along today. As it says there, social values. It was really good to hear your introductions and hear some of the challenges you've been having with social value, as well as me. I've worked with social value previously when I worked for London Borough of Barking and Dagenham. And it was one of those things where you could really see how much it could bring, but it was trying to navigate the complexity of all of the calculations, the various different sort of tools that were out there, whether you had a localized tool for your own authority, whether it was an ECC tool. There was lots and lots of different bits out there, but it was putting your finger on that sort of core thing. How can we look at the measures that apply to our organisation or our service or the offers that we're running and get that real value from them? So when I started with ECC 12 months ago, one of the projects that I picked up was social value and how we could use, and luckily I'll go through a couple of them. We've got some quite good tools in Essex. There's two tools that I'll talk through, and then there's a Suffolk tool as well, which gives you a really good basis for how do we calculate some of the social value? How can we apply this to some of the different services, different activities, events, etc. that we've got running? So the aim of my sort of presentation today is I'll take you through some of the tools. I'll give you an oversight of some of the tools and then take you through how we've turned that into something that we can apply for the library service, apply to the library service. And when I say library service, there's lots of other bits in there as well. There's partnership activities, there's the different events that runs. It's not just about the books and the interactions that we have in the library. It's about all of those different things, rhyme times, different dementia cafes, all different bits like that. So all of the different things that we have going on. REIT, so just to get us started. So social value, just in case you don't know what social value is, it's the measurement to try and understand, essentially put a monetary value to the interactions that you have on an individual level with people that you're supporting. So that could range from measuring some of the larger scale activities that you have. So if you're bringing somebody in from unemployment into volunteering and get them into employment, applying a measure to something like that, and you can put a monetary value against those sort of interactions, to things like preventing social isolation. So if you're running a series of events and activities, those people attend there and you're targeting a particular audience, if it was something like social isolation, how do you apply a value to that? So you then end with a figure where you can go, actually, here's a return almost on our investment. We're putting these courses out, we're running these events, we're putting this offer out there. Here's a monetary value against that to show the impact, the social impact that that has. Social value can be used in lots of different ways. So the bit I'm focusing on is really those events and interventions piece, but you can look at it far more broadly than that. And people do look at things like the social value it brings through our planning and different pieces. So how we lay out our roads and the importance of certain things when people are traveling to work. There is a huge sort of scope for social value, but essentially it's that positive change, is that better decision making based on what people value. And for this part, it is around the events and the impact of those events. So as I said, there's a couple of tools that are primarily used for the social value calculations in the library service. And you can see here, one of them is the TAWS tool. So that's the themes and outcomes measures tool. And then EVOLS, which is the economic value of the library service. So the TAWS tool is a nationally recognised tool. It's quite commonly used across lots and lots of local authorities and other areas. It's got some really robust calculations in there and is recognised through central government. So used to evidence various different bits linked to funding, etc. The EVOLS tool is an economic value of the library service. So this was a tool that was developed, and university has completely gone out of my head now. It was developed in conjunction with a university, working through and developing a tool specifically looking at the economic value of the library service and some of the measures that we can apply there. But there is a common link between some of those measures and the different activities that we've run across multiple different services. It doesn't have to be in the council, it could be outside of the local authority, voluntary community sector organisations, lots of different places. So you'll pick up some of those different bits as I touch on both those tools. I think both of those tools are available to access. The only thing with the eVols tool, and I can show you some of the calculations in the different pieces that are there, how that's being used, is it is an internal Essex tool. I think it's only for Essex County Council, but I'll check that. If it isn't, I'll be able to share the link and different bits with you after this call. So what I've done and what I'll take you through in a little bit more detail later on is I've taken some of the measures from these tools and gone, well, these are great. There's some fantastic elements of each of these tools, along with something that was written by Kingston Moore for Suffolk Libraries is another paper that was written. It's a really, really long paper, but very, very good. And it's a review of Suffolk Libraries and has lots and lots of detail in some of the calculations they've used. I've taken lots of the information from all three of those tools and gone, well, which ones apply to some of the services that we're running within our Essex Library service? And how can I make that into a coherent list of calculations so we can apply that to everything that we're doing? And I'll show you a little bit of what we've done as we go through and how we've applied it to try and make it a little bit simpler. Any questions so far? Feel free to jump in as I'm going through. If there's anything there that if I'm running ahead too quickly or there's bits there you don't understand, please just stick your hand up and I'll jump in and try and answer them as we go. Okay. Cool. So as I say, the social value tools used by ECC libraries. I'm going to stop sharing my screen just for a sec. Stop sharing the presentation and I'll share my screen with you, so we can have a look at the tools that are available. Can everybody see my screen okay? Yep. So this is a copy of the Essex themes and outcomes measures. So you can see here, and there is a common theme with all of the different tools. You'll find the theme in which they're looking at. So in this case, it goes through like enable inclusive economic growth, help people get the best start and age well, and it will go through the various different areas. Each of the tools will then have what outcome are they looking at. So it's this one, if we focus on just one, it's the increase the sustainable employment within Essex. And then they'll start to break down how they've calculated those individual measures. So, for example, just looking at a couple of these, the percentage of local people employed on a contract, number of employees taken who are long-term unemployed and unemployed for a year or longer. They then have in the background, it's not going to let me slide along now, is it? Because I've got, oh, bear with me. They will then have various calculations in the background that are made to work out these proxy values for the number of people. And then it will have detail in each of these tools around number of people. How is that calculation made? Is that made on the assumption that they attend X number of hours? It could be number of people attending. There's lots of different calculations that happen in the background to then give you that total value of the intervention. No. Does that all make sense from a calculation perspective? There's lots of different bits there. And this, I think, is where some of the confusion comes from with both these tools. How are these calculations made? What is it that happens in the background to be able to give you the unit offered sort of figure for social value? Both of these tools don't give you masses of information around that. Yeah, jump in, Karen.
Mute. So where you're saying it goes on in the background, do you have to click anything to find that, or you're saying that that's just the background work that they've done?
So some of the calculations will show in some of these tools, some of them don't. So what I've done with the tool that I've developed is show you how each of those individual calculations are made. So you can see, for example, if lots of these are from, if I scroll across a little bit, I don't know what's going on with my mouse, localized to Essex Council. So this one won't give you too much info. But you can see here, this one, the calculation was made through the Armed Forces Covenant. So there'll be information in there in the covenant through that link, which will tell you how this calculation was made. What I've done with the tool that I've started and pulled together for the library service is show each of those individual calculations. So you can see, for example, if we were looking at social isolation, some of the standard health measures and where we've taken them from. So there'd be research, for example, into social isolation. It says if you can prevent social isolation through X intervention, this is the value that can bring, and that could be in a separate research paper, and it will have a value, but it will tell you where that value has come from, provide you with a link to the information to be able to see for yourself, okay, this is robust. It tells me here if we offered this and did this, there's a percentage chance that we'll prevent somebody from doing X, Y, Z, or engage them in this. That could be things like prevention of somebody going and the cost of somebody turning up to attend a GP because they're lonely, and it's for somebody to talk to. It's more to talk to the GP than really have an ailment. So it's things like that where you can then have some of those calculations there, and I will take you through those in more detail. So here you can see this is the eVols tool. Has anybody seen the eVols tool before or used it? No. So I think one of the things with social value is there's lots of good bits out there, but they're not hugely well promoted. In particular, if you're working for Essex County Council, there's some really good measures in here, some really, really good things that you can use and pull out. Not all of them apply for everything that we're doing, and some of them are really, really difficult to apply everything to. But you can see here, initiatives taken or supported to engage people in health interventions. You can start looking at that, and it's invested, including staff time. There's different calculations that can be applied that way. I won't bore you too much with each of the tools. eVols is the tool that was developed with the university. So if I go back up here, you can see here, this was an economic health tool, and they broke this down. This is very university based. So there's a newer version of the eVols tool that is due to come out. I think it's later this year, where universities continue to work on this and develop this. It's part of their coursework. It's part of the things that they do there. Is a particular project, I think it's for their master's students. There's some bits in here, again, great tool. It's got some fantastic ways of making calculations. This is very, very robust because there's bits in here where they're using multiple different methodologies. There's a percentage chance of some of the interventions being successful. So they apply lots of different measures to be able to get to that end sort of social value. The bit that is, sorry, I'm going to have to move you again. It's not helpful, this bit. You can see here, there's a couple of sort of case studies. So there's a few different case studies, and I'll just sort of break this top one down for you. This is where they do use some of the proxy research. So, I was saying around the sources of information that help you make a calculation. This is where they'll start to break down and go, for example, Reading Sparks was a case study where they were testing the social value that was added via that intervention. They looked at costs here, and you can go to the research to see how the Sure Start local programme made a calculation around interventions to help support people with reading and reading age in preparation for school and different bits like that. So there's a value there that you can apply straight away. This bit here is where, again, really, really robust, very, very robust piece of research, and you can see the value in the participant and the inflated value. So again, it's another tool where you look at it and you go, which one is it? Which one do we use? Which one is the right sort of measure for us to be able to say, okay, I'm running something that meets the criteria of the sort of reading spark style of intervention. Here's the value per participant. What's an inflated value? It doesn't give you all of the information that you need to be able to, without going into each individual piece of research, to find out what they mean by value participant inflated value. So it's a fantastic tool again, but there's elements here where it takes a little bit of work to be able to go in, delve into how have they calculated this, what's the different bits that we need to be aware of. And you'll see as we run through all of these different case studies, it's exactly the same. You can see how they've come to a calculation, total value, the inflated value, but what you will see here is they do returns on investment. There's different sources of research, so it's really, really robust because they've gone through lots of different individual pieces to go, right, you're running a falls prevention piece of work, so that could be chair-based yoga, for example, to strengthen and try and prevent people from having falls, supporting older people, different bits like that. There's the research. The research in there says if you can offer this, this is a cost per individual. It's got all of the information there, but it's a difficult tool to be able to pull everything from to go, right, what does falls prevention actually cover? How do I make sure that this fits with the program that I'm running? So I'll come off of there now. And there we go to my little social value calculator. So what I've done with the library service is take the activities that we were running, looked at each of the individual tools, so whether it was an eVols tool, TAWS tool, Suffolk Libraries, research, looked at the individual measures and then applied those to each of our individual activities. So in here, you'll see a breakdown of each of the individual activities, how they've been calculated, and how we then apply them to our particular activity. So for rhyme time, the Sure Start research, and then it will give you more information about the research, and then you can follow that link through straight away to see this is how the calculation was made. So it gives you that information. We did this for each of the individual activities across the library service. So looking at all of the different bits that it covered, what the measures were, and then how we apply it. What we did with some of these was apply realistic measures for Essex. So for example, if I was using the Suffolk Library tool for looking at how they calculated some of their measures, I localized it for Essex. So there are some calculations in there where you'll see things like this one, for example, estimated cost of going to a group, £5 for refreshments, £5 for activities, £10 for travel. There's some bits in there where you're looking at it and you're going, does that really apply for ECC? Is this what we'd expect from some of the groups that we're running cost-wise? So you shift some of those valuations based on that. It's good, the localization of some of those charges. And that's, again, where social value can shift massively, and why some of the national tools don't always necessarily work, because some of the costs and calculations, for example, in the south could be very, very different to how they're applied in the north of the country. We did exactly the same with the events, so the various different events that we were running, looking at the calculations which applied, using TOMS measures, eVols measures, Suffolk Library tool, and then applied them to each of our individual activities. And again, the detail is in here, and links and different bits throughout the rest of the tool where we can delve into some of the sort of themes and outcome measures for social value. So I'll just stop sharing my stuff there because I don't want to bore you to death with all of the tools. Any questions so far? Fire away, Kim.
I was just going to say, where you're using different calculators and there's obviously different metrics to that, do you then come to this is an average for that activity?
So we tend to only apply one tool to each activity. So I
Right.
wouldn't, for example, use an eVols tool and the TOMS tool and the Suffolk Library tool for rhyme time, for example. I'll only use one. And it's based around the best fit for that particular activity.
And regarding the TOMS, are
Yep.
they refreshed on an annual basis, the calculations,
So good
i.e. in the
question.
costs?
Yeah, I'm not sure, Kim.
Okay.
I know the eVols tool, they go through various different refreshes. So that was last refreshed in 2023. So straight away, it's already a couple of years out.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not sure. I can find out, Kim.
I was just going to say on that I've got a meeting with the Essex Anchor coming up, so I can ask that question.
Yeah.
How
Yeah,
often
yeah,
that
that would
is,
be good.
because she's like the guru on it for Essex County Council. So
Cool.
yeah, so I will ask how often is costs updated. That's basically what you said, wasn't it? What the calculation?
Are the
Yeah, because
calculations refreshed?
I think the end, obviously, if we're going to have a set of TOMS that we use for, say, Brentwood and Rochford,
Yeah.
I would want to be, this is based on figures of X date.
Yeah.
And then I think the other thing for me is more around getting the right measures for the right activities. As you say, you've kind of honed it down to the library service.
Yeah.
And I need to think about, technically it's across all services in Brentwood and Rochford, but there'll be different TOMS for different services.
There will, yeah.
Nightmare.
Yeah, it's a big piece of work. Yeah. It's whichever way you try and do this, there is definitely an element of that front end has to be right, and you have to have a little bit of time to go through and look at the different measures to go, yeah, this fits with the service that we're running and we're offering, and this is this a robust measure for us to be able to apply against that? I think I think there's other bits in there that you get into the really, really technical element of it, that it's like the return on investment and then the probability calculations and all different bits. So what I've tried to do with the social value measures that we're applying for Essex libraries is keep them at that point where we add the caveat that this is an indication of the social value that we're bringing through the library service. If you start to drill down into any of these tools into like an intricate level, they've all got their failings in different points. It's a tool really to be able to go and have a conversation and raise the profile of some of the intervention that's being offered and make those links to make those sort of
it's an indicative value,
happen.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it definitely is. Yeah, and it prompts that conversation with counsellors, with funders, with various different people to go, this is how we've linked this to health, and this is where this intervention is supporting X, Y, Z, and this is a social value measure we've applied. I think as long as you can say how you've applied that measure, it's that conversation piece, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are we 100% sure that every single person that attended a rhyme time is going to go to school and have an improved literacy score? No, we're not. And that's where you get into some of those probability things of around 60%, 65%. How do you make this? You could spend forever getting into it in the data world. Which is where I've tried to just sort of go, that's great, and I get that from a data purist perspective, but there is also an element of where you go, this is for us to be able to apply a value to something that we're offering and then have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
Karen.
I was just going to say, so where Kim is saying you've got all of those different pieces of work across the whole of the council, so it's I mean, and we've got social value KPIs that we've got to look at.
Yeah.
But I guess that once you've done the piece of work where you've set it and what your valuation of that piece of work is, then that's the time consuming bit, because then it becomes easier.
Yeah, it definitely is. It definitely is. And what I would say is the Suffolk tool is probably the best paper I've seen. So the Kingston Moore piece of research into social value, because it has at the end of the report, and it's published nationally, so it's out there for everybody to be able to see, has some really, really robust measures at the end. There's swathes of them in the Kingston Moore report for Suffolk libraries, different measures in there. What I would say is some of those you'll see there's a flex in the costings. So there is, again, with that tool, it's brilliant. The report is brilliant. The calculations are really, really in depth. But there are some, from my personal perspective, inflated measures of social value. So there's elements of that where I've looked at it and gone, I wouldn't apply that to the library service, because I think actually we'd have to do a bit of community engagement and research to see the value that actually brings in ECC, and is that something, because there's some there you'd see straight away looking at the report where you'd think, I don't know whether I'd add that one or not, but there's others in there where you can see there's some really, really robust historical research as well that can help with some of those measures. But it is a really, really useful report to look at, because it's very, very long. It's not the easiest of read. Again, it's an academic paper, it's a research paper, but there are some fantastic bits in there. And I'm not on commission, and I didn't help them write it or anything like that. But it was a really good piece of research into Suffolk libraries. Great. Just jumping back in. How long have I got, by the way, Karen? I should have asked that at the beginning, shouldn't I, before I wrote this as well? Oh, you're on mute, Karen.
Yeah, you said 30 to 40 minutes, and so we gave an hour.
Perfect.
So you've got got another 20 minutes or so.
Perfect. I'll fly through these ones then. So then if there's any questions at the end, we can look at some of the tools and how we've applied some of the measures to get what we need out of the service. So with social value, I think the thing was, when I started, it was how do you turn it into something real? So it was starting low level, working with the services across the whole of Essex, all of the library service, across Essex, to go, this is what we want to do. This is what social value is, and here's why we want to do it. We want to be able to show 2 or 3 different bits that you're doing and add a monetary value to it to show, because we know the importance of the offer that you're running, but does everybody else? And how do you take a service that isn't an income generating service and show the value of what you're getting for that service? So it was starting to slowly bring to life some of the different things that we were doing across ECC. So you can see here relatively low value pieces, but it was starting to make sure people understood this is the conversation of social value. We want to be able to show what value your Scrabble club brings at Walton. We want to be able to say, look, this is what we can offer through some of our book pack distribution, our book pack distribution in nurseries. How can we raise the profile of some of the different bits that we're doing to prompt conversation with different people as well? To say, when we go to a group, if we will go into our early help services and say, are you aware we're doing this and this is the social value we bring? Are you aware there's little clubs running? Are you aware we're doing this from a health perspective? So it was getting that ball rolling and not necessarily going straight in with, I'm going to measure absolutely everything that we do across our service. It was take little chunks of what you're doing, try and get that social sort of value in there, measure it, report on it, have a conversation about it, and then move on to the next thing. See if there's something else you can apply the value to and start to build that conversation. What we've ended up with is that I'm now in the position where we implemented social value across some of the smaller activities. I then looked at all of the activities that were running across the library service, applied measures where there were logical measures to be able to apply to all of the sort of core services that were running, then started to break it down into different areas to try and show these are the activities that we've got running. This is where we focus on children and families. These are the elements of where there's health and well-being, education, employment, etc., to really help to break down the service to be able to have conversations with different groups across ECC around this is what the library are offering. And you can see here, these are some big figures. But when you think about Essex's library service, we've got 74 libraries across the county, and you can see here we were running around about 1,100 events per month, events and activities across the service. You see 21,000 people attended those events, and we've got the measures in. Quickly, before we got to this stage, it was what processes are in place to be able to capture those events. Do we know all of the activities that are happening across the library service? So unless they were booked paid events or booked events through our website, we were in the old-fashioned world of the bar and gate system. So people being measured through ticketing around how many people were coming through. The events were logged and out there for people to be able to see and promoted on Facebook. But we couldn't tell how many in total have we got running across the service or not. So what I implemented was an events power app. So this is a Microsoft Form power app where you could just simply log, this is the activity that was happening, this was the date of the event, number of people that were attending, was it supported by staff, voluntary sector, was it a partnership event, the event duration. So was it an all-day event, so an open-ended event, or was it a session that lasted 60, 90 minutes, 120 minutes, etc.? And where was it? In the background of this app, it then connects to the social value list that I showed you that we'd built for Essex, so the one that I'd created. So if they selected a rhyme time, it links to the list, it pulls the value, and it calculates that value for us. So in the background, we've got two different bits. We've got a front end, something that's capturing all of the events. So I could start to report on these are the number of events across ECC libraries. This is where they're being held. This is the number of people attending. But also in the background, this was a health-based event. This is the social value that it brought. These are the split of the people that were attending. So if they were library members, we could also tell a little bit of information that way through if they'd registered, etc., etc. So what I would say about this is the event power app front end is really, really simple to build. It's like a Microsoft Office form. If you haven't used event power apps before, it's the background piece around what you want to link it to. So I did get some tech support to be able to do that. But it only took us a day or so to build. It's not hugely complicated, but it is really, really important for that connection. It could be that you wanted to, if you wanted to use this in your own service and you didn't want to go through a power app, that could be as simple as a Microsoft Office form. And linking that and going, right, as long as I'm tracking and recording and have a spreadsheet for how many people are on there, you can still apply, as I did in the original calculation form that I showed you earlier, the cost of the event, the calculation, and then drop those numbers in there. This is where it starts to get really cool. So as we go forward, this only launched in March, the events app, and it started to capture all of the data, but you could see straight away the split of the different events that we were running across the service. So unsurprisingly, there was lots and lots of activities for children. But what it will be able to give us going forward is a breakdown of where we were holding those activities, a heat map across the whole of Essex. It will be able to tell us what demographic we were hitting. Were we working in an area of deprivation? Are we running the right events for adults in this location or not? All through Power BI. And that is relatively simple to build because Power BI is a fantastic tool that can do lots of those different calculations and bits for you in the background as well. Once you plug the data in, it will, I won't say automatically because it's not as easy as that, but it's a relatively easy piece to build. So just a quick example of things like customer stories around how we started and how you could apply some of this just to promote a good interaction and have a conversation with people. So one of the other things that I did as well was all of our customer support assistants, it was built into their objectives to learn about social value in the library service. So shared information with them, said had a look at it, and different things like that. It was then built into their objectives to say, on a monthly basis, when you have your check-in with your manager, have a conversation around a good news story. If your manager has observed you have a really good interaction with somebody, capture that, and we can then promote that as a good news story and apply a social value to it. So really, really simple stuff, like just giving the skills and support to have the best outcomes possible, and then see the value, and for the staff to see the value in every single interaction they have, but also for us to then get it down to a really individual level to promote, and again have a conversation with counsellors, have a conversation with different services around, here's just an example of some of the sort of day-to-day conversations that we have in the library service or the support that we offer. So this one's a lovely one. Just an elderly gentleman rejoined library service. He wanted to use BorrowBox. If you don't know what BorrowBox is, it's the digital offer for the library service. So you can go in there and you can access lots of different stock and books and different bits without having to come into the library. You can access it all online. And he had challenges with his health there, as you can see, and wanted to find out about a press reader. He was supported, he was able to access it, and now he's embracing like the use of modern technology. And this was a 90-year-old gentleman, or was about to turn 90. So to move from having to physically come into the library, and he wanted to be able to do stuff and use a digital reader and access stock in a slightly different way, what a fantastic outcome. And we could apply a value to that interaction, and then have the social value element, but also the bit where we just wanted to have those conversations with people and say, here's a good news story. So it's the sort of different scales of social value that you can use. I won't go into all of these because there's a couple more examples in there. And this is just a summary of, again, just explaining how we moved from that sort of objectives, check-ins, creating the Events Power app, linking it to the list of the social value measures that we had to be able to bring sort of social value to life across the library service. That is a really quick fly through, by the way, of social value. So yeah, any questions? Oh, I've bored you all silly now. You're like, no.
All dumbstruck. That is that. I just a comment. I think that is really amazing. And oh, Lucy's got her hand up. So let's have a question from Lucy.
Go on, Lucy.
Hello,
Nice to meet you,
sorry
Lucy.
I was late. Hello,
That's
nice
all right.
to meet you. Just a quick question about the I'm sitting next to Kim, by the way, if you can hear an echo, you can probably hear me talking through her.
Cool. No, it's okay.
Just a quick question about your use of other TOMs. Sorry, I missed this, probably because I was late, but obviously you've used a combination of different calculations in there. Is that just because the Essex TOMs didn't have a particular calculation that you needed to use? Yeah. Okay, right, fine.
Yeah, so it wouldn't apply to all of the different events, and the TOMS tool was targeted on certain areas, wasn't it, across different themes and outcome measures, where the eVols tool was developed specifically for libraries, as was the Suffolk tool. However, although it was developed specifically for libraries, there's loads of the measures in there that apply to lots of different activities and events and different bits that we run across all services. It doesn't necessarily have to be a library service, but there are some bits in there where at the beginning I was explaining you would have to look at the detail of how they've come to those calculations to make sure they apply to your organisation.
Yeah, because I can see with the Essex TOMS calculator, I think they've just picked out the key ones that kind of align to, from the national TOMS, that align to their corporate strategy, or everyone Essex, or whatever the strategy that's in there, haven't they? So they've just aligned them on that, and then so there'll be. So I'm assuming the points of social value that are outside of that particular strategy are not being calculated for, but obviously they're still valuable. Which is where you've then used other calculations to show those. Yeah, is that correct?
Exactly that. Yeah, just looked at, created a bit of a hybrid. Okay, I was going to say monster, but a hybrid tool then to use for libraries, for Essex libraries. Because the eVols, all of the tools have their pros and cons. I think the TOMS tool is fantastic, and obviously it's nationally recognised, and there's lots of different bits there where you can link it to the strategic piece, as you said. eVols was brilliant, but there is a complexity with the eVols tool that it has inflated values in places. It can be quite challenging to turn the measures into how do we apply this to different areas? And then the Suffolk, the Kingston Moor piece of research for Suffolk libraries has a really, really robust calculation measures at the beginning. There's lots of bits in there around return on investment and how they've calculated that. I think I was explaining at the beginning as well, all of the stuff that we're doing with the social value piece that I've been working on with Essex Libraries does come with a bit of a caveat around this is used to promote conversation and to show some of the value and impact that the service is having. But there is also a piece there where if you kept drilling down and kept drilling down, you're going to find bits where you'd go, are all, for example, people that attend a literacy intervention going to be successful in X? No, they're not. So there is some bits there around probability and things that would need to be worked out in further detail. So it's an indication of social value.
And I guess as well, there's a limit, isn't there, to staff understanding of kind of actually that piece. I guess you were showing that with the gentleman with the digital support. Understanding that piece of interaction you've just done, or that piece of work that you've just delivered, has got a value to it, and it's about ensuring that everyone's on the same page to understand that is a social value to the community, to the organisation, and to make sure that that's logged, so there's a true reflection of. I mean, you could go on forever, couldn't you? There's probably way more social value because there's way more kind of, even if it's like pennies here and there, you know, that would all add up to big and positive impact. So I guess it's about being kind of knowing that you need to cut off somewhere and just kind of pull out the key ones, because else you could go on forever trying to calculate
you could
stuff.
spend forever trying to calculate it all, and you could spend forever drilling further and further down as you start to get into data purist sort of level around, can we add this and can we do this? And I don't know where it would end up, if I'm being honest, if you kept going and going.
No.
The bit I've done with all of the Essex Library Service is explained that think of social value as something where you don't want to baseline it for the service. You don't want to go, we've got £1 million social value target for this year, because you could apply that, and as you say, you could apply it to absolutely everything and hit that £1 million target, but that isn't what it's about.
No.
It's about being able to go, 1 month I'll produce a social value report and it will have over £1 million worth of social value. The next month I might produce something and it shows me £20,000 worth of social value. But what I'm using it for is to be able to go to different groups and different people and go, did you know we run this across the library service, and last month we generated 42,000 in social value? But then the 42k gives you that monetary impact piece, but then you get into the detail as to why that intervention was important. Because there's so many different bits that happen that people just don't know about, don't talk about. So using it as a tool to be able to bring a little bit of focus and add a monetary value to something is quite a powerful thing to be able to do.
The conversation that I've had previously with Karen is around how do we calculate the social value for our VCS organisations who have not, I mean, you know, some of this can be extremely time consuming to put together, as you know. And how do we keep it really simple for organisations to use kind of a VCS calculator? They can just go, do you know what? Yep, chuck that in, and then they can come up for a figure to support them with their funding applications, to support them with kind of promoting their services. How do we keep it simple without it being incorrect? You know, I think it's a balance, isn't it?
It definitely is. Yeah, there is a balance there around trying to focus on some of the core elements. So with each of